Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1309th New Social Environment. I'm Magali, a Programs Associate here at Rail, and the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Marlene McCarty and Ksenia M. Soboleva. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Since the 1980s, Marlene McCarty's artwork has challenged toxic masculinity and probed issues of sexual and social formation. Her artistic practice, from heat transfer text paintings to monumental ballpoint drawings and poisonous garden installations, examines embedded patriarchal power structures. She was a core member of the AIDS activist collective Gran Fury, member of Women's Action Coalition, and a co-founder of the Transdisciplinary Design Studio Bureau. And our host today, Dr. Ksenia M. Soboleva, is a New York-based writer and art historian specializing in queer art and culture. She holds a PhD from the Institute of Fine Arts at NYU. Her writings have appeared in the Brooklyn Rail, Bomb, Ursula Magazine, Cultured, Art Forum, Frieze, Hyperallergic, as well as numerous exhibition catalogs and artist monographs. Soboleva practices an autobiographical approach to art history and an historical approach to autobiography. She is currently completing her book manuscript, What Happens After: Art, AIDS, and Lesbian Histories, and Soboleva teaches at NYU. And with that, I will hand it over to Ksenia to get us started.
Thank you so much, Magali, and thank you to everyone at the Brooklyn Rail for making this possible. I'm so delighted to be here always, and thank you to Marlene for joining me today. Yes, we can start a slideshow so that our viewers can take a look at the exhibition. Marlene, congratulations on this absolutely stunning show, which I had the honor of seeing with my own eyes during a magical 3 days in San Sebastian back in October. And as someone who has followed your work for a good decade now, it was really exciting to see the work in a space like the Tabacalera that could rise to the occasion and really do justice to this incredible work. And as you can see, the exhibition consists of large-scale drawings, a poisonous garden earth piece, and then the most recent body of work that consists of abstract compositions that are made with plant extract, and we'll discuss that more later. But it is if I understand correctly, it is your first exhibition in Spain, and
Yes.
and it is deeply connected to Basque history, the plants that are depicted in some of the drawings, and also the plants that are in the earth piece actually grow wild in the Basque country, and they're plants that were used by witches in the Middle Ages. And of course, the witch hunts didn't just kill witches, most of whom were women. They also destroyed entire systems of knowledge about plants and about healing. And so what you've done here is recovering some of that witch knowledge that had been lost. So I'm curious to hear what drew you to the Tabacalera and the Basque Country for this exhibition and this body of work, and how has the region's landscape shaped this exhibition?
Um, First of all, just a little thing. I keep getting notifications that people are joining and that I should admit them. So I've just been admitting them.
That's great.
I don't
But
know if
also,
that's.
but also don't worry, because if you don't admit them, someone else will.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, that aside. First of all, I want to give a huge shout out to Ksenia for making the effort to travel all the way to Basque country to actually see in the flesh this exhibition. So I thank you tons for that, Ksenia. I'm also really happy and thankful to Brooklyn Rail for doing this. Um, I'm very, very happy about that. And I do want to give a little shout out to all the people who worked really hard in San Sebastian, because this was, all in all, this was a 3-year project. Um, So I want to thank, first of all, Tabacalera International Center. I have to read this stuff so I don't forget anybody's name. Tabacalera International Center of Contemporary Culture and Donostia San Sebastian. That people I would like to thank is first and foremost Clara Montero, the cultural director, who actually had the idea to do this exhibition. I'll return to that in a moment. Ana Aguirre, head of contemporary art. Laida Mindia, exhibition coordinator. Clara Gutierrez Arana, she was an ethnobotanist I worked with for research and for plant growth. The media crew, the media lab crew of Tabacalera was incredible. And I also want to thank Frank, Edu, and Zabi, the tireless installation crew. They were amazing. And if this was Hollywood, you would fight very hard to have the and credit. And I want to thank Maita Garbello Matsu, who is the curator and scholar that I worked with on this exhibition. I think Maita is here or will be here. She's going to read a little bit at the end with Ksenia. So to all of you, I say a scary Costco. Okay, so Ksenia, you ask like how I chose the Basque Country. I didn't choose the Basque Country.
Yeah, how did the exhibition come?
To be quite honest, San Sebastian does a big film festival, international film festival every year. The Tabacalera is tied into that. So because of my partner, I guess, wife, Christine's job, she's a filmmaker, producer. I met Clara probably I met her earlier, but in 2019, we met and I was describing to her the project I had just completed in Buffalo at Silo City, where I had worked with the ecological steward at Silo City to build an earthwork of plants that had long histories in that region. And she was very fascinated by it and basically went back to Tabacalera, and over however many years that was, we kept returning to each other and having conversations. And finally in, I think, 2023, she was like, would you consider doing an exhibition at Tabacalera that started from this center of looking at plants in that region and kind of growing the project out of that. So that's how it happened. Part of the ideas that she was really interested in, which actually has a lot of resonance today that we weren't really thinking about then, was because we started conversation, she's like, will you just bring plants here? And I was like, no, 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 no. First of all, you can't just transport these plants back and forth across borders. And a lot of plants that grow here would be considered invasive there, et cetera, et cetera. And we got into that language of plants, of like, what's indigenous? How do you draw a line about like who belongs where? Because plants, even though people are saying like, this is from here, that's from there, they're moving around all the time. Wind, water, birds, capitalism, commercialism, tourism is just moving these species around all over the place. So that was sort of the starting point of the project. And then I started working with started doing my own research on just sort of history and plants. And I started working with an ethnobotanist from the region, Clara Gutierrez. And, it's really hard to start researching plants and not wind up in the spell of the witches. So that brings us to the title of the show, which actually is, I have to read it to make sure I don't goof it up. Sasi, guztien, gainetik, which is one half of the witch's spell that was used for the witches to be able to fly to the coven meetings. The entire spell, that means over the brambles. The entire thing is Sasi guztien gainetik eta hode aspitik, which basically means over the brambles and under the clouds. So that's kind of where it all started, to answer your question.
Fantastic. And a spell you used to have me and Alyssa fly.
Yes, I said it a lot.
Exactly.
Focused at you guys.
As my friend Susan Aber says, the most basic form of a spell is to say something out loud. And actually, some years ago, I organized a public program with Susan and Pam Grossman, who just came out with a new book about witches. And
speaking of which, look what just joined us, a little black cat.
Hello, black cat. And we discussed the intersections between queer identity and witch identity and how both are being reclaimed. And of course, throughout history, the word witch had been used against women and queer people who refuse to conform to certain societal expectations and heteronormative gender standards, and witches were persecuted for defying the church and the patriarchy. Queer people were and are being persecuted for defying the church and the patriarchy, and as of course you know, the suffragette movement channeled witch history, and really witches were independent women who were educated and were challenging the patriarchy and the church. And so I'm curious, what was your before this exhibition, what has your relationship to this history been? If not specifically witchcraft, then the persecution of women and queer people.
Well, I would say my work has always dealt with the situation of being in a female body in a male world. I mean, the one thing that strikes me just listening to what you said is the fact that to participate, women always have to break boundaries. We always have to be the ones who push beyond the edge of the status quo and then are subjugated for doing that. But that's where we open up like new possibilities to actually change what's going on in history. I mean, that's where the primate work comes in, because it was really about, I was kind of thinking about these women primatologists who so radically offended the academic world of research by naming their subjects, by kissing their subjects, by loving their subjects, by living with their subjects, which was everything they were not supposed to do. But they uncovered all kinds of new information, which basically changed the story of man. And I just felt like that it's that constant pushing against the enclosure of where we are defined. I just want to go back to the witch thing. The thing that really interested me about the witch situation was much less the sort of supernatural aspect, which is interesting for sure. But what I found in the Basque research was that, once you're in that territory, you're thinking about the Inquisition, you're thinking about the obliteration of women from the development of healthcare, you're thinking about the plundering of the Americas, you're thinking about the privatization of land, you're thinking about the enclosure of women in the domestic, the catalyzation of capitalism. You're just kind of thinking about the whole modern project and how we got where we are today. Because I have to say, being in Europe during the things that are going on in our country, which have effect all over the world, it really was like, how did we get here? How did we get here? And going back to that moment of the obliteration of not normal women, it just really is endemic to the changes that got us to a place where it's just all about profit all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and several of your drawings in this show also depict these canonical modern architecture and sculptures that were made by male artists and that are now being overtaken by this growth of plants. I first learned about your work through your engagement with Gran Fury, and most of our viewers probably know that Gran Fury was an AIDS activist collective that produced many of the visuals and graphic design for ACT UP. And Marlene, you were the only female member who was part of the sort of core group. Other people came and went, but you stayed in it. And at the same time as being involved with Gran Fury, you also, in the late 80s, early 90s, you had your own studio practice, which was very text-based. It was large canvases with text heat transferred onto the surface, and the text was a sort of, I always think about it as a kind of linguistic cross-dressing, where you were appropriating and critiquing derogatory male speech or gutter talk, or as Trump would probably say, locker room talk. The sort of language that we associate with toxic masculinity. And then in the mid-90s, there was a shift in your work to large-scale figurative drawings with ballpoint and graphite of teenage girls who were charged with murder, and to many it seemed like a break with your earlier practice, but as we just discussed, I actually see that there is a distinct continuation in that you've always remained interested in how these different histories of persecution intersect with misogyny, right? And
that's very well said. Thank you.
And thanks. And how specifically also how this the murderous woman, right, whether it's a teenage girl or a witch, or a teenage girl who is a witch, becomes a trope in popular culture, and it's interesting because that trope is sort of having a revival right now. There's all these Netflix shows. I had a lot of time to watch TV over the break because I was recovering from a surgery, and so I watched a lot of Netflix, and there were all these female protagonists who were murderers or could be murderers. Like there's that show Love and Death. The His and Her show just came out. The Beast in Me with Claire Danes. There's going to be a new series of Monster that's going to focus on Lizzie Borden and Eileen Bunoros. I never know how to pronounce her last name. Anyhow, there is this revival of the murderous woman, or this fascination with the murderous woman. And oftentimes she is, of course, a lesbian. And
yeah, go ahead.
yes, no, please,
No.
please.
I was just thinking, but don't you think it's ripe to have that right now? Because I mean, women are our rights are being taken away. The right-wing Christians are talking about how we should be staying at home with our children. Men are starting to talk like the 1950s and say they don't want their wife working. Women are being vilified by the powers that be daily. So in a sense, all of these popular culture tropes are just an articulation of that that's fascinating. And America is primed for that right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it's not hard to imagine why that's happening.
Definitely not. Yeah. No. And in many ways, I'm delighted, that there is a return to that. And so many different perspectives can now be added to that discourse. It's basically that, and then there's heat of rivalry, which is the other the other phenomenon that I'm currently obsessed with, which is another conversation. But when I've written about your work before, I've referenced Linda Hart, who in the 90s theorized this trope, particularly in film, in her book Fatal Women, and she argued that when violent women find their way into fictional narratives, particularly film, they are categorized as lesbians because their sexual deviancy is therefore tied to criminality, which of course is a larger trope of tying queer identity to criminality. And she talks about Thelma and Louise and Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction. I don't know what my question is here, but I guess
can I just say something?
Resonate? Yeah, please.
Can I just say something? Because I do think you're absolutely correct by saying she's a lesbian or she's queer or trans or whatever. It helps explain why. It explains deviancy. It doesn't analyze like why deviancy. It explains it in a really simplistic way. And I just want to say that the Murder Girls were not fictional. They were real cases. And I really tried to stay away from, they were all situations where the mother was killed. And I tried to stay away from those kind of really narrowly explainable ideas. In other words, I tried to stay away from young girls who had lashed out and killed their entire family because they were being sexually abused by their father. Or, that is explainable. That is understandable. But these were young adolescent women who were not psychotic. They weren't on drugs. Some were sort of experimenting with lesbianism, but that was never part of the equation. And they really, under the pressures of the domestic, the social stigma or social viewpoint of them as like sexualized beings, whereas like 5 years ago they were not. There's a whole combination of things that just combined to charge this impulse to kill. And that's not rationally easy to explain. So I just want to, so that they don't get tangled up with a lot of this popular culture murder stuff going on. There's something that separates, in my mind, there's something that separates what they did from that pop culture world.
Mm-hmm. But it's also interesting to me that in art history, the murderous mother in particular has been such a fascination to male artists, like when
Right.
Marcus Harvey made the portrait of Myra Hindley, and it was in
Yes.
this, even though she didn't murder her own children, but she murdered children, therefore she
Yes.
was a mother murdering children.
Yes.
And he made that huge portrait that was included
With the
in the
handprint.
Sensation show, exactly, with the baby handprint. And it was, he was critiqued, but it was a sensation, right? It
Right.
was a sensation. Everyone was talking about it, everyone was writing about
Right.
it. And I feel like when a female artist makes work like that, it's uncomfortable. People don't talk about it. And it is because if you are a woman making that work, if you're a man making that work, it's from a place of fascination. And if
Right.
you're a woman making the work, then there's
Prurient.
this assumption that it's like, oh, is there an
Is she gonna
identifying?
kill?
Yeah, is she identifying with this, and it causes a lot of discomfort, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, just on that note, sorry, we're kind of off track in history
No, this
here,
is great.
but I had done an interview with Rachel Kushner for The Believer about the murder girls.
Mm,
It was on press, and board members from The Believer were kind of proofing things. And this is in the olden days when there was still proofing on press and that kind of thing. They pulled the article on press because she had asked me a question sort of like, do you think we're all capable of murder? And I said something to the effect of, I do believe that given a sense of desperation, anything can happen. We could turn to murder. And they were like, we're not printing that.
wow.
So that just kind of affirms what you were saying.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm convinced that if a male artist had said it, it would have
Oh,
gone.
they'd be like, ooh.
They'd be delighted. Yeah, exactly. But also the other thing that I was thinking about that does very much connect your earlier work to this work is that you never abandoned language. There is still very much language in this work.
I've tried.
We've all tried. There's some you can see it in these photos, but in some of the close-ups, you can see that there is text you write on the
Yeah.
drawings.
Well, actually, the one that's up right now, which is called The Dearth,
Mm-hmm.
there is a caduceus on the right-hand side that has two snakes kind of winding up. And it was sort of my thinking about how the powers that be who then, okay, they wiped out women's knowledge, but they also stole women's knowledge to act as a basis for what we know as institutionalized healthcare. And so with healthcare, I was thinking about this symbolic of like the two snakes and the caduceus. And the patterning on one of the snakes has the words, everybody looks at it and thinks it's Russian, except probably Ksenia, who's like, that is not Russian. But it actually says, excuse me, miss, can I borrow your hole?
Mm.
So, there is this, and then of course the titles all over the place.
Exactly. Yeah.
They have so much information packed into them.
Yeah. And there's another drawing that I took a photo of that says, "Is no one gonna make my dick hard?" Which which to me is really clearly referencing the earlier work and again doing this linguistic cross-dressing.
Right, right.
And how do you go about titling the work? Because there's a lot of critique in the titles themselves.
I think with, I sort of this first body of work that sort of started into this whole like plant and everything else world happened in 2016 after President Trump was elected the first time. And I started really thinking about, I mean, we saw such a display of like toxic masculinity. And I really started thinking about the obsolescence of the white Western canon, and the whining and complaining of the guy. Oh, there was a whole Me Too movement. There was Black Lives Matter. There was a lot of like resistance actually to this display of like the toxic white power play. And I started thinking about how the white Western canon was actually obsolete. Like what we know as the canon was not going to take us forward. And then I started thinking about like, oh, these guys are in such misery over their fear of losing power. And I started thinking about like, probably be put in jail for saying this, but I started thinking about like, how could they be put out of their misery? You know, how could they be like dulled? How could we hasten this change? And I started thinking about weaponization and self-protection. And I don't even know exactly how I sort of stumbled on the idea of poison as sort of the classic female weapon. And then from poison, I was like, but plants. And so I started this envisioning. It was really a simple project in a way of taking these iconic male mid-century modern masterpieces and imagining them as they aged, like anthropomorphizing them and thinking about them decaying and growing old and insignificant. And so you see tumors and cracks and sagging skin. And at the same time, you see very specific plants that are either, they're not just overtaking the sculpture, but they are either there as hallucinogenic situations, they're there as deadly situations, they're there as protective plants that have been traditionally used by women, which, many plants can kill or heal at the same time. So that's where that whole project started. And then there was just so much complicated thinking going into it. And it was really, really, really slow. It took me a long time to kind of get up to speed with those drawings. And I just felt like this is to answer your question about the titles. And I just felt like I needed to provide some clues on how to enter that artwork. And so that's why the titles became so long and inclusive.
Which I think also reflects the scale of the work. And I was gonna ask you also what drives your desire to work in such large scale, because there are what did you say to me? How many hundreds or
The
thousands of
one,
hours go into
the
a
one
drawing?
with the snakes on it,
Yeah,
took over 1,500 hours.
it's a long time.
It's a long time. It's a long time. Yeah, there was a certain mania going on last year.
And you don't really, I mean, you've done a few smaller scale pieces that I've seen, but really you're an artist who works large scale.
Yeah, although I'm thinking about taking a year and doing small drawings, just so I don't have to have a giant studio space.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's beside the point. No, the large drawings take us back to the murder girls again, because when I started that project, I had a really hard time kind of figuring out how I wanted to visually articulate it. And I did do a couple of really tiny drawings of a couple of the young women. And they didn't do it for me. I was just like, oh my God, this is so demeaning. They're just little Barbie dolls. You know, there's nothing here that reflects the sort of monumental psychological issues that are going on. And so I just decided they have to be bigger than life. And so I did. I made them really big, which, by the way, if there's any artists out there, is not good for sales. But no, I made them really big, and I think there was a lot going on there, because one was like, I'm doing drawings, but I'm gonna fucking take up my share of space. So there was a little bit of a reaction. And you know, it's also the contrast between the actual material and the actual mark making tools that are used are so small in relationship to the format of the drawing, that I'm really pushing. Remember, I said females always have to push beyond the boundaries of what's acceptable. And I just really have had to push beyond those boundaries of what is acceptable. And it's made me really kind of an advocate for drawing, just from the standpoint of it's a really direct transference of like one body of energy to another body of energy. And it's, where was I going with that? Hang on. Transference of the blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it's really just about the fact that these drawings can now envelop the viewer as opposed to being looked at from afar. So they actually become a part of the viewer's environment. And, you know, drawing has always it's always secondary. It's always the handmaiden to the masterpiece. And I don't know, I just feel like there's something really radical in trying to take this secondary art form and make it be the masterpiece instead of just the sketch. The other thing that I really like about drawing is that it's the land of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not far from writing, and it's really a place where ideas can be really manipulated quickly and erased quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, I think about that a lot in terms of drawing as well. And you know, so much of the art that I find exciting also revolves around some sort of paradox, right? A material that that appears solid is actually entirely soft. And with these drawings, it's also the ballpoint, the detail. You expect to see it on a smaller scale in this intimate realm. We associate it with journaling, and
Right.
here they are large scale and presented as yeah as exactly that as masterpieces. And drawing is this space where, as you said, ideas are explored, and it is something that is not, it is a medium that by definition, at least its history, is as something that is not fixed, right? That is
Exactly.
still that is still in flux.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so that's yeah.
it's, I mean, in a sense, its history is fixed just because when you try to look historically at drawing, you really can't do much except look for drawings that were done as sketches for paintings. I mean, there's some, but again, they're always small and they're studies. Um, and as I say, it's the land of the idea. It's the like, I might make a painting of this, but I can make a really quick sketch
Yeah,
and I haven't invested anything.
exactly.
But I'm investing everything in these drawings. And I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
how.
Yeah,
It's
in terms of what I meant with the being unfixed historically, it is exactly as you say, that historically it has occupied this preparatory role,
Yep,
right? It's like it's the scaffolding, it's preliminary, it's subordinate, it has not yet arrived, right? As Jose
right.
Munoz said, queerness is not yet here. It has not yet arrived, and the drawing supposedly is the piece that has not yet arrived. It is it is the sketch before the painting. So it's yeah, and but then of course that provisional status is exactly what for me makes it so exciting, as a realm for this exploring all this potential of queer rebellion in this case also.
Yeah, it is. They are rebellious. They are rebellious. And they're dirty. They're
Yeah.
not like, oh my God, dealing with like, you know, I don't know, galleries, conservators in museums. Oh my God. They're so uptight around the drawings and the paperwork and the preciousness with the way they're like handled and dealt with. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't do that. These things have holes in them. They are beat up. They have my fingerprints all over them. They have cat hair on them. So it's kind of my own rebellious
Yeah.
nature to just be like, this is what you get.
And if we can go back to the works that we were just
Yeah.
looking at, I really want to. We have
Yeah. I want to,
yeah,
yeah, we're
we're good.
moving.
We're good, but of course
Yep.
time is flying. And I really want to make sure that we talk about these new pieces. And you mentioned that the exhibition curator noted that in this new body of work, you are sort of moving from representation of plants to the presence of plants. So instead of representing plants either in the drawings or in the earth piece, here plants are literally embodied in the canvas. And maybe you can explain to our viewers a little bit more how the pieces were made, because as I understand it, the plants are growing through the canvas.
Yep. Yep. Basically, I've worked with plant for a number of years now, and I always am working with I'm showing them, I'm drawing them. It's always about them. I'm describing what they do. Blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, in the past year, I also read a lot from the philosopher Michael Marder, who is a big proponent of plant intelligence. Um, And I really started to think about like how I am still centering the human in our narcissistic way to be in control of everything I'm doing. Um, I'm in control of everything I'm doing around the plants, or I'm trying to control them. And I was like, wow, I think I want to try to actually do a piece of art with another species. Um, so after many failed experiments, um, these pieces evolved. And what you see here, every color that you see here has been determined by the plant. Basically, not to get into to get too granular on this, but basically I germinate seeds. I have this situation set up where they can grow and eventually grow through canvas. I put out the seeds, but then the seeds decide which ones are going to live and which ones are going to die. And then their sort of placement of where they are on what will eventually become the canvas is completely determined by them. And then I give them an entire life cycle, which means either they're annuals and they'll die at the end of that cycle, and I can take them off the canvas and see what's left, or they go through one life cycle and begin the winter senescence. And at that point, I can again remove them from the canvas and put them back in plain old dirt situations, so they continue to live. After I remove the canvases and the plants from each other, in that immediate moment, there are like really, I mean, I have to get like kind of woo-woo meditative, and I have to do it in daylight. But I can see all of these different colors on the canvas that have been left by the root function of things going into the plant and things going out of the plant. So what I really do then is match those colors to swatches, because as they dry, they kind of recede. The colors recede because, you know, it's natural colors, so they don't stay. So the rings around the canvases are actually colors that were made by the plant. I mean, it's not plant dye that's on the wall. I matched it to plain old wall latex by mixing. And then the canvas is, you know, the centerpiece of the drawing / painting. So yeah, and they're very sort of energetic. I mean,
Totally. Yeah.
there's a sense of like vibrations going on in there.
Completely. I can attest to that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, it puts you into meditative.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, completely. It's interesting hearing you say all that, because I'm realizing it's not just that you're shifting from representation of plants to the presence of plants. It's also shifting from the representation of interspecies kinship, right?
Right.
Women and primates, plants, to actually the presence of interspecies kinship, which is you making a collaborative work with the plants.
Yeah.
In a
And
way.
it, you know, it was a crazy kind of experiment. Because I had to, it's like the plants and we got in some kind of like energy conversation. You know, they could tell me when they needed more nurturing, nor more water, when they had too much sun. But I had to like be receptive to that, you know? It wasn't just about reading in a book of like, that should be in partial sun and partial shade, you know? So it was a really interesting way forward. There was one photo that was up. I just kind of want to address it because Clara Gutierrez, the ethnobotanist, she was so moved by this installation that she decided she wanted to do a community workshop engagement situation with the installation. I was like, have at it, sure. So this is a drawing. This is not from me, that little face drawing situation. It's from somebody who participated in the workshop, but he had put that in front of, this is yarrow, to kind of have an energetic conversation with the yarrow. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting, the things that the work sort of ignited in people.
Yeah. There's one more question that I really want to ask you before we go over to questions, and also if there's anything else that you would like to throw in, please do. But I'm really curious how your years in activism have informed the way in which you think about the environment, right? And especially in this moment of environmental precarity and imminent collapse. What are some of the lessons or
Well, I don't know if I know what the lessons are. I do feel like part of this, the exhibition, the installation, which is up right now, is really my own exercise in trying to realize, I mean, this goes back to Gran Fury because, you know, we were working in the 80s. It wasn't trendy to do things with lots of different community groups and things, but we were always talking about like how to intersect with a more diverse world around us. And I think that diversity has to go beyond the human. It has to reach out. We have to be able to have some kind of inclusion of all living species because we're all entwined like crazy. I mean, well, you're going to read the Mandrake thing. Okay,
yes.
so yeah. And until we can let go of our sort of narcissistic position on top of the pyramid of living creatures, species, we are not, we're going to be done for. But you asked specifically how act up in Gran Fury, maybe.
No, really, just that was a beautiful answer. Really, how your activism connects to how you
No,
think
it's
about the
just
world
like
today.
it reforms, you know, as like we grow, if you know, as people, we just keep changing our whole life. And as we grow and learn things and drop things and take on new things, you know, we have to, I don't know, that's part of the process. I'm going to stop.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on and open it up to questions. And then we'll circle back to do the reading. And maybe before I read, you could actually say a few words about also how different texts came to be.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Marlene.
Thank you, Ksenia.
Thank you, Marlene and Ksenia. That was such a lovely conversation. We have a couple of questions lined up for you. In the audience, if you have a question, there is a link in the chat and you can submit it there and we'll turn to you next. The first question comes from William Van Roden. I'll give you a chance to unmute William.
Hi, Will.
I will.
Nice to see everyone. You want me to say it out loud, or I didn't know how that worked. So I was just curious, just because I'm interested, as you know, Marlene, in mushrooms.
Yes.
And like there's all these plant usage, and I was just curious if some of them were used, I like to use the word entheogenic, but these psychedelic purposes as a spiritual guidance, as a teaching tool, as another way to elevate outside the human. I just didn't know how that worked in, or how that was awareness in the work.
Well, the one thing you are not seeing here is usually, okay, there's, for example, in San Sebastian, there's a earthwork that has Basque plants in it.
Mhm.
And I provide these little giveaway brochures.
Mm.
I was a graphic designer one time. Will's a great graphic designer. And in here is a whole description of the plants that you see in the earthwork or in the drawings, and it gives you all that information.
Yeah.
Because many of these plants are hallucinogenic. For example, yarrow is not hallucinogenic, but just holding yarrow will like align your chakras. Datura, which is in one of there's pictures of like big hands holding a skirt, and there's like a pod that's a spiky pod. That's a datura pod. That has been used in vision quests in the Americas since we don't even know how many thousands of years. Curious that Datura stramonium is a plant that Europeans say is not indigenous to the Euro-Asian continent. However, there are Arabic and Chinese writings from, I don't have the dates in front of me, but like 200 BC that mention the Datura stramonium. So it was on this continent. And many people, when we were trying to identify like the products used in the witch's ointment, which we didn't even talk about, and which was extremely a hallucinogenic experience. Witches did not fly, but the combination of hallucinogenic properties in the different plants used in the flying ointment gave the sensation of flying. So yeah, that is a part of all this. We needed a few hours to get there. Nice to see you.
Thank you for that answer, Marlene, and that question, William. The next question comes from Leopoldo Gu. I see that you're on camera, Leopoldo. Would you like to ask your question? Okay. Leopoldo first says, you are a rock star. My mother shaped me to see feminism as both a guide and living language, and your work has long been an anchor in my own growth and curiosity. I would love to hear how you navigate that beautiful collision between terror and tenderness in your work. It feels like a constant, delicate battle, and one you hold with extraordinary grace.
Oof. I don't know if I can answer that question. I
would say it's because you're a Capricorn. Like me.
Thank you. It's like a feeling thing. That's all I can say. Is on one hand, I feel outrage, and on one hand, I feel extreme love. And so it's like, how do those things weave together? I know that doesn't really answer the question, but that's sort of where the flame starts.
Thank you for that question, Leopoldo. The next question comes from Gail Vachon, and they say the title is in the Basque language. Is that language not related to any other language also part of the work?
Hi, Gail, wherever you are. Well, the show was in Basque Country. The title of the show is, what is the question exactly?
Is the language also part of the work?
I think maybe Gail wants to be unmuted.
Let me see. There we go.
Or as I understand it, that does Basque come return in any of the works or titles?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's
just
in.
because you're interested in language also, and I was just wondering, I actually looked it up, like, oh, what could this language be? Oh, duh, it's in
Right,
Basque Country.
right.
But I was just wondering if you were thinking about language as also, or did they give you the title?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We
So
came up
you
with
chose
it.
a title in Basque.
Yes, and I actually, Maite, the curator, who you're going to hear from shortly, she's going to read in Spanish and Basque because this little brochure I just showed Will is in 3 languages.
Hmm.
But I'll talk about that.
Or Marlene, maybe this is a good moment to
Okay.
talk about that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so the Basque are very passionate about retaining their language, which almost died under Franco. By the way, can I just say Spain and Basque Country might be a really good example for us when this current situation is over, how to rebound after authoritarianism. Okay, we don't have to go there. But yes, so first of all everything is identified in 3 languages within the exhibition. Everything is in English, everything is in Spanish, everything is in Basque. And because I'm working in Basque Country, Basque was very important. But for example, I'm just going to give you a little rundown of how these things worked. So there's all this research. I did all this research. Clara Gutierrez did all this research. I took the 2 bodies of research, smashed them together, and made one document of the research about the plants. Then what I decided to do was, rather than me write a master text that would just be translated into Basque and Spanish, because there's this whole team of people working, I was like, I wonder what would happen if I wrote from my perspective because, okay, let me just say, we have these little bitty descriptions. They could only be 200 words. So that meant you had to edit a lot from the master research chunk. So I was like, I wonder what would happen if I, as an American, wrote a text. Maite, I wonder what she would writing in Spanish. And then what would a Basque writer write? What would they find important? So basically, we have 3 brochures in 3 languages from 3 different perspectives. So there's no master text here. So to answer your question, Gail, yeah, language kind of keeps infusing itself in this project. Does that help? Okay.
Thank you for that question, Gail. The last question comes from Parisa Poirier, And Parisa asks, what is your process of composing the drawings like?
Hell. It's like hell. Usually, I mean, I have to kind of start, I start with an idea in my head and I sketch it out big on the, just straight onto the paper. I don't usually, sometimes I might do sketches like this big just to kind of help me remember what I was thinking. But I sketch it onto the big drawing and then everything starts to change. And it is really, sometimes I feel like it's almost, I've never done, like stone chisel sculpture, or clay maybe. I have never done sculpture like that. I've never done sculpture. But there's this massive like drawing, and then I have to, because I draw so close, and then I have to go way back to see what I've done. And then it starts changing, and I start adding new stuff, taking away stuff. A drawing may change radically by the time it's done, from where it started. So it's really just this constantly evolving process that's not creating something and replicating it big. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Parisa, for that question and that answer, Marlene. That concludes our Q&A. We're gonna conclude with a reading from Ksenia. I don't see Maita in the room.
Oh,
Maita, if you're here and can turn on your
hang on. Let me
camera,
just,
I can give you a chance to unmute. But we can start off with
Yeah,
Ksenia.
I'll start and then
she said she doesn't have the Zoom link.
we can fix that. Shall I start?
Oh, I think she didn't register. Do you know how do we?
You can just send her the same Zoom link that you used to log on. You can just
Today? Okay.
yeah, just now. Just text her that, and then she can so yeah, as Marlene said, there is this little booklet that it has, first of all, it has these drawings of the different plants that are in the installation and in the drawings, and then also it has these little narrative biographies of the plants, basically. And the one that I chose to read is the mandrake, Mandragora officinarum. And the reason that I chose mandrake is because, like Marlene, I'm a Capricorn, and I share a birthday with Joan of Arc, January 6th, and Joan of Arc carried a mandrake near her heart and was then persecuted for that because it was reason to believe that she was a witch. So shall I start? Okay.
Yeah, oh, okay.
All right. Mandrake. Humans and plants shared a common ancestor about 1.6 billion years ago. All Earth life shares the double helix DNA structure and a universal code for building proteins. The anthropomorphic roots of the Mandragora officinarum have fascinated humans for millennia. Don't uproot a mandrake, you will die. A fatal scream will be emitted, killing anyone who hears it. Legends abound. Only mandrakes born under the gallows, in dirt watered by the ejaculation or blood of hanged men, were magical. The plant takes possession of those who approach, unless previously sprinkled with women's urine or menstrual blood. In the folklore of the Basque region, Urio was a willing participant in love spells and fertility charms. Often called love apples, a mandrake under the bed increased fertility while inducing love, conception, and sexual arousal. The root was steeped in wine or vinegar to create an aphrodisiac. Midwives and healers of the Middle Ages worked with mandrake during childbirth and for fertility. In Zugaramurdi, women brewed an uplifting mandrake liquor that flew them to the Akalar. Mandragora officinarum were so important to families. They were included in family inheritance wills. That's the mandrake.
Okay, she just responded, okay, so we might want to give her a minute or two.
Marlene, and if not,
Yeah.
do you want to read one of the other ones, maybe?
Sure, I'll
Your
read.
favorite?
Oh, okay, hang on. So the whole earthwork, which we didn't talk about that much, is called Monument to an Epistemicide. An epistemicide is like the wiping out of knowledge. Let's see. Okay, I'll just read. What am I going to read? Okay, I'm going to read Yarrow just because it's there and you saw the Yarrow drawing painting situation. Plant human knowledge predates Homo sapiens. Aromatic yarrow with its feathery, fern-like leaves and essence of anise has long assisted hominids. At the Neanderthal flower burial in Shanidar Cave, Kurdistan, a concentration of medicinal plants, including yarrow, evidences medicinal knowledge. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, gorillas consume 55 of the 110 medicinal plants employed in Congolese healing practices, selecting them specific to the ailments they are experiencing. Hence, plant human knowledge predates Homo sapiens. In the Basque Country, it is believed that simply holding Achillea milfolium grants psychic protection, stimulates courage, reinforces intuition, and dampens fear. The flowers, a nectar source for pollinators, must be harvested during a summer's full moon. Pressing energetic yarrow to the forehead cleanses the third eye, brings chakras into balance, and repairs the auric field. Its energy repels negative psychic influences, including cell phone radiation. Druids rub their eyes with yarrow leaf for clairvoyance. Yarrow's effect on blood are evidenced in its name, Achillea, for Achilles, who carried it to Troy to treat his wounded troops. The alkaloid compound achillene accelerates blood clotting. During the First World War, it was used on battlefields to halt blood loss. The sterols harmonize menstrual cycles, whether scanty or excessive, and aid in menopausal symptoms. Beware, this magic shield can induce abortion. Did Maita show up?
Yes, Maita here. I'm going to give you a chance to unmute Maita.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Hi, Maita. So
Hi.
nice to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank
I
you.
couldn't connect and
I'm
sorry.
sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't get to the text till it was over, and I was like, oh my God. So Maita's going to read what the Mandrake, but she's going to read the version she wrote in Spanish. And as none of the writers of the Basque were able to join, she will read the Basque because she is also Basque.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
Marlene.
Maita.
I'm beginning with Spanish. Mandrágora officinarum, mandrágora. La mandrágora no es muy alta. La planta no suele superar los 30 centímetros, pero la raíz puede adentrarse hasta 1 metro por debajo de la tierra. Sus flores son de color morado y sus frutos tienen la forma de pequeñas bayas rojas. La raíz bifurcada de la mandrágora Se representaba durante la Edad Media como una figura humana y se decía que la planta emitía un grito desgarrador cuando era arrancada de la tierra. Es tóxica incluso a través del tacto. No se deben manipular las hojas, los frutos y sobre todo las raíces, ya que puede provocar mareos y dificultad para respirar. La raíz contiene alcaloides muy tóxicos, como la atropina, la iosciamina o la escopolamina. Su uso medicinal es antiquísimo y figuraba en distintas recetas del papiro de Ebers, uno de los tratados de farmacopea más antiguos que se conocen, realizado en el antiguo Egipto en torno al año 1500 a.C. También fue encontrada en tumbas de faraones. En el Génesis ya se hacía referencia al uso de esta planta. Ingrediente fundamental de los ungüentos para volar de las brujas, como muchas otras plantas de la familia de las solanáceas mencionadas en este folleto, la mandrágora tiene propiedades narcóticas, alucinógenas y expande nuestros sentidos hacia nuevos aspectos de la realidad. Aunque debido a su elevada toxicidad su uso está desaconsejado, entre sus propiedades medicinales destacan sus efectos sedantes, laxantes, antiinfecciosos y anestésicos. So maybe I'm going with Basque now. Yes? Directly? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Mandragora officinarum in Basque is urrilo. Mandrake is urrilo in Basque. Landareek eta gizakiok 120 eta 160 artean partekartzen ditugu geneak eta urriloak ahindetasun hori islatzen dut. Baina, bai landarearen inguruan sortu dien mitoetan, bai medikuntzan izan duen erabilean. Antzinako kulturek urriloa gurtzen zuten, eta sorginkeria, talisman eta erritualetan erabiltzen zen. Arraroa eta biltzeko zaila den landarea denez, oso ondasun preziatuak eta garestiak ziren urriloak. Askotan, familiako testamentuen bidez eskualdetzen ziren ondasunak izateraino. Europako folkloreak bertute magikoak egozten zizkion landarean erroari, zeinak giza formaren antza zuela uste zen. Urriloaren alderdi ezagunena bere sustraizakon eta lodia da, askotan giza irudiraren itxurako izan daitekena. Landareak, ordea, arrosako koloreko ostoak ditu. Erritualetan urriloaren sustraiak energia negatiboak baztertzeko erabiltzen ziren, bai eta madarikazioak hautsi eta ugalkortasuna sustatzeko ere. Erdi Aroan, emagin eta sendatzaileek sarritan erabiltzen zuten urriloa erditzearekin eta emakumeen osasunarekin zerikusia zuten praktikatetan.
Thank you, Maite.
That's it.
Sorry you
Thank you
weren't
so
on
much,
earlier.
Maite. And thank you, Marlene and Ksenia. We'd also like to thank the Tiger Foundation for sponsoring our NSC program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 25 years. A donation directly supports our writers, production staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And if you're free, join us next Tuesday at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Lumi Tan, Ang Vo, Mara Wen Donahue, and Christina Yang on the event of We Exist in the Ambivalence of Those Motherfuckers at Performance Space New York. And as Israel tradition, you can now all unmute and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you all again so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Great,
much.
Marlene.
Thank you,
Thank
Marlene,
you.
Ksenia.
Bye.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Go
you.
see the show. You'll have to fly to San Sebastian.
Hi to everybody go to San Sebastian.
Sorry.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, Reed.